In this lecture, we're going to be learning how we can undo our mistakes. We're going to be learning how to use the undo tool, where we can increase the number of undos that we can make, using the Alt key to undo rotation, grabbing and scaling, and applying location, rotation and scaling before finishing the lecture with a challenge. So let's go in to Blender. So say if I wanted to do something, so say if I went into edit mode, went into face select, grab a face and I start playing with it, so I move it about a bit. Say if I looked at that and I thought, that doesn't look too good, and I wanted to start with my cube again. Do I need to delete my new cube and create one from the primitive meshes? No, I don't have to. I can just undo my previous steps. To do that, we use the hotkey combination Control on a Windows or Command on a Mac and Z. So I'm using a Windows, so I'll press Control and Z, and it goes back and undoes one step. Control and Z again, again and again. And there we go, it's gone back to its default shape. In order to save memory on your computer, Blender limits the number of times that you can undo, but it does give you the option to change this limit. To do this, go to File, go down to User Preferences and click, and under the Editing subsection, you will have an undo section. The factor that we're worried about at the moment is the steps factor. The number that you should be seeing at the moment is 32. I believe that is the default. You can change this to any value you want between 0 and 256 steps. The more memory or RAM that your computer has, the higher I would advise you to increase your number. As a general guide, if you have, say, a computer with 2 GB of RAM, I recommend going up to 64. If it has 4 GB of RAM, I recommend 128 steps at most. And if it has 8 GB of RAM or more, I advise 256. My computer has 8 GB of RAM, so I can use 256. In most cases, it doesn't affect it too much, but if you have a computer that doesn't have a lot of RAM at all, and you decide to maximize the number of steps in Blender, you will actually find that your computer will become slow and sluggish. So just bear that in mind. I'm now going to save my user settings and exit user preferences. Now, I'm going to go into object mode. Now, there are different things that we can undo. So we can specifically undo location, rotation and scale using the Alt key. For example, say if I scaled my cube to be a little bit bigger, but I wasn't happy with it, and I wanted to start again in terms of scaling. To revert it back to its original scale, I would press Alt on my keyboard and S. For grabbing, it's the same. Grab and move to a new position. To move it to the old position, I press Alt and G. Note that your cube or your mesh has a fixed applied position. That means that no matter how many times I grab and move my object, when I press Alt and G, it will always go back to the default position, as I've just done there. The same applies with rotation and scaling. So, what are these applied factors? If we go back to our PowerPoint slide, we can see that we can apply location, rotation and scaling. So what does it mean by that? Well, if we go back into Blender and open up the Scene Properties panel, we can see that we have values. So we have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. These are all applied values. If we scale our object, for example, we can see that our free values increase. By applying our location, rotation or scale, we revert these values back to the default 1 or these values back to the default of 0 without changing the cube. So what we want now is for the cube to be this size as default. To do that, I will go to Object, Apply, and I can choose one of several options. I can choose Apply Location, Apply Rotation, Apply Scale, or Apply Rotation and Scale. Since Scale was the only thing changed, I'm going to just apply Scale. And there we go. Even though our cube has not been reverted back to its original size, our scale has now been reverted to 1. That is because we've applied the new size as the default scale. Let me show you how that works with location and rotation. So grab, move over here, and we can see that we have several wild values, but we want this to be the center point for this object. So we're going to use the hotkey now, which is Control and A. This brings up the quick bar for applying location, rotation and scale, and we're going to click on location. And there we can see that all of our values have moved. Now bear in mind that when you do this for location, your origin and your 3D cursor remain in the center. So if you do this, bear in mind that you'll need to set the origin back to geometry, like so. Finally, we have rotation. So we can rotate our object to any value we want, and then we can press Control and A and apply rotation. Of course, this also works if you rotate, locate or scale along specific axes. Note, however, that this does not work in edit mode. We cannot apply positions to specific faces, edges and vertices. This application of location, rotation and scale only affects the object as a whole. So, it's challenge time. I want you very simply to go into your user preferences and change the number of undos you can make to any value you want and save user preferences. Do that now, guys, and I will see you in the next lecture.